I know that I'm a tad late to the subject. I know that Dave Cullen has made at least 2 videos on this. I know that Black Pigeon Speaks has made a video on it, as has Irate Bearfag. But there is 1 or 2 points related to Article 13, the subject that these 3 people have covered, that I want to focus on. A position I'm not entirely sure I can do well or justice, because it comes from a position of uncertainty. So for those that don't know, Article 13 is a way of essentially policing what websites upload, link, taxes, bollocks like that. I know I've oversimplified that, but honestly I cannot for the life of me be bothered to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes reading Article 13 to you. Needless to say, this has been universally panned by quite a number of online social media or social commentators, and understandably so. For those that reside within the EU, this is trying, challenging, difficult, and slightly irritating that we've only heard about it now. Well, now when it first came out not so long ago. And this, if anything, is another one of those glaring weaknesses where information isn't being shared or made available or open and available to the point where people should know, especially when it comes to how you police what information they can see and who it is that provides it to them, along with how much you decide to bill someone to show a source or to use a source, completely omitting, ignoring, and abusing copyright and fair use to suit your needs, dictating like a dictator. Almost like something I called the EU before Brexit. Imagine my shock. Now, during the Ghost Poo podcast, I mentioned to Irate Bear that I felt there was a way of getting around the copyright issue, in that if you had to use a source for a video, you didn't have to link the article. Why not link an archive link? Instead, archive the website and use that. I'm not entirely sure that would get around the issue entirely, but the very premise that a website is then being forced by the EU to filter content, to me, puts me and many other people in a very difficult and confusing position. For a number of smaller commentators, not smaller like me small, I mean big but smaller than the main ones like the BBC, it puts them in a position of, are they able to do this and is it feasible? For people like me, it's a case of, so essentially people have to trust what I say is true. I cannot show what I'm saying, and I cannot link to what I am reading from, almost like I'm making a no bullshit video. No offense to you, Brooks, but we know you've done that once or twice, at least. In any case, with these new rules coming into play, and going to Parliament from the Council, with us smaller channels, we have to think about this from the position of, okay, what is the impact? What does it do to us? Because if this goes through, even though many people, many social media giants, have said this is bad, so far I've seen many open letters to the EU saying the copyright part of Article 13 needs to be thrown out, and understandably so. It is absolute trash. And I know I'm oversimplifying all of this. I'm not doing my best skeptic impression, I know, but as I stated earlier, I am in a position where I'm not entirely sure how this affects me, because as the majority of you know, my country voted to leave the European Union. When I voted, I made the decision I wanted to leave everything. There are some laws that I want to see enshrined in our law, but as our laws alone, not as laws that we accept as their laws, integrating their law still with our law. And after a stream I did on the Cthulhu-Kin and Friends show held during that stream, I became very much aware that there are aspects of the EU that legally are beneficial, certainly in agriculture. I did spend about 45 minutes talking about sheep shaggers, so that was something. Link in the description if you are at all interested in watching that. And aside from that, and enshrining those laws into our laws as UK-specific laws, I want to leave the customs union. I want to leave the single market. I want to leave the common fisheries policy. There are many other things I want to leave, and to the precious few that want the customs partnership put forward by Theresa May, please don't. I don't like the idea of being tied to the EU past the date we are supposed to have negotiated our exit, but I know there will be a transition period, and this should if anything raise alarm bells, because we don't know if they'll even leave at all. That sounds somewhat melodramatic. It was initially put to me by Irate Bear during a stream he did yesterday talking about right-wing watch, and the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to edge towards I do not believe the United Kingdom will leave the EU, which I don't like in the slightest. If we are to make our own way, forge our own future, and prosper on our own, how do we do that if we are subservient in some manner to a bunch of unelected dictats, authoritarian little shits, who are bringing in laws like this that would heavily restrict so many people? It would prevent a number of people from getting news from certain sites on the grounds that they don't have a license to, or they can't afford the fee, or because they're not approved by the EU. This idea was introduced in Spain, as Dave Cullen talked about, and I've seen it referenced in many articles. It did not work. Google pulled out, and I believe they did in Germany too. Understandably so, because if somebody, a government of some kind, is controlling what news you get, what you are allowed to see, how are you any better than any other kind of country, some kind of communist country, that filters the internet for you, making the decisions for you, for what you can see, what you are allowed to observe, view, and whether or not you can afford to pay the license to link to a site? Because this does actually raise the alarm bell about fair use and criticism. If you are linking to a source, a news article, certainly on my channel, I criticize quite a lot that I see in the news, and I do it because it is either inaccurate or what has transpired is astonishing, based on recent events, and it cannot be denied. In the news especially, the courts, the police in my country, they deserve to be railed on, continually, vigorously, perpetually. And I say this because I truly believe that my criminal justice system and the law enforcement in my nation suck. If you're not allowed to link to a site, as I stated earlier, you have to take my word. That is not good enough. If I cannot link to sources so that you can confirm what I am saying to be true, or whether my conclusion is wrong, of course, how do I then improve upon myself if proven wrong? And how do I help you to understand my point, or prove to you that my point is true? Now, I earlier stated my concern was centered around the fact that I don't know what my government is going to do. As each week goes by, I watch the Prime Minister fecklessly fumble about in Parliament, giving very weak answers. They typically centre around her saying, well, if you listen to me in my earlier mentioned speech, because she is unable to think on the spot, which is making people like Jeremy Corbyn look strong. And with no MP giving us any further information about this, we are in a very difficult and challenging time. I know that sounds melodramatic, but I am a tad concerned that we are going to have to introduce this into our country, which would not entirely surprise me, because in 2017 Theresa May tried to create an internet that would be controlled and regulated by the government. And that's not a joke. The idea was that the plans would allow Britain to become the global leader in the regulation of the use of personal data and the internet, which was in Theresa May's manifesto. The idea was that the increased powers, will allow the government to work harder to ensure there is no safe space for terrorists to be able to communicate online, which is reference to terrorism acts. But unfortunately, what is and is not considered a terrorist seems to be what is and is not on the ultra-left. And Theresa May is the weakest Prime Minister we've had since Gordon Brown, who I firmly believe was nothing more than an interim Prime Minister. So we would have to go back even further to find a weaker Prime Minister than her. I know this wasn't what anyone expected. A lot of you would have expected me to break down Article 13, but I don't need to. I just want to raise the concern that I have, that I am not convinced that the United Kingdom will leave the EU before this is either enforced, if at all possible that is, or we are going to be stuck with it enshrined in our law to the point where we are unable to, well, people like me operate. There are ways around it, of course, and I am aware someone has postulated whether a VPN would help. It is quite possible that might help, and if I had a sponsor link to VPN Shield, I would chill it. But I don't. But I will go and get one. I wonder if Bearing still has an affiliate link. Anyway, that all aside, I wanted to quickly take an opportunity to thank everyone that has watched my video on Anne Boleyn Reid. It is the most viewed video on my channel, and I still read the comments now. My favourite comment being the one that said, "I'm glad I've got ad block for this horse shit." That is my favourite comment. A number of you raised concerns about diets, animals, and things I left out because obviously I could not fit it all in, and you are quite right, which is why I have already started to slowly piece together Part 2, which will focus solely on relationships and animals. There is nothing more I can prove about the dieting that is already fucked. Hell, she's already gone on a new diet, dropped 15 pounds, and then 2 days later uploaded the video of her eating a chickpea curry with white jasmine rice, saying it was 2 servings of each. Bitch, that was 4 servings of each. And eating that much white rice is never healthy, no matter how many times you try and fob it off as points for Weight Watchers. In any case, to the additional 2,000 people that have subscribed to this channel since that video, welcome. I'm Omegon. I think I finished here now. Yeah. I hope everyone has a lovely Sunday, and thank you all for listening.
I've got downs. Imagine my shock.